The movie begins with introducing us to two important terms: kaiju, the Japanese word for a giant monster, and Jäger, German for hunter. Right away, we know this isn't going to be your typical monster movie. These alien invaders didn't come from outer space like in most sci-fi films. Instead, they emerged from an interdimensional portal deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, right between two tectonic plates. The first kaiju attack hit San Francisco. Conventional military forces managed to take it down after 6 brutal days, but not before 3 cities were destroyed and thousands of lives lost. It was a wake-up call that humanity wasn't prepared for this new threat. The attacks kept coming like clockwork. Manila 6 months later, then Kabul, and soon cities around the world were falling like dominoes. It became clear that tanks and jets were about as effective against kaiju as a water pistol against a forest fire. In a rare moment of global cooperation, nations put aside their differences to develop the Jäger program, massive human-piloted robots designed to fight the kaiju on equal footing. The first Jägers were single-pilot models, but the neural load proved too much for one person to handle. They upgraded to a 2-pilot system where each operator controls one side of the Jäger's body, because even giant robots need a co-pilot. By 2020, the 7th year of the Kaiju War, Jäger pilots had become global celebrities. That's when brothers Raleigh and Yancey Beckett, pilots of the Jäger Gypsy Danger, were awakened by alarms signaling a Category 3 Kaiju attack, one of the largest threats they'd ever faced. As they suited up, they knew this would be anything but a routine mission. They weren't the brightest minds or champion athletes, but they succeeded in piloting the Jäger and defeating the kaiju because they shared the right neural pathway, the mental bridge needed to control Gypsy Danger together. Fully suited up, they entered the Jäger's cockpit.
The crew prepared as well. Among them was Tendo Choi, providing mission control intel for Gypsy Danger. Then came Marshall Stacker Pentecost, the man leading this operation. Gypsy Danger's cockpit locked into the massive robot frame. Before operation, the pilots needed to connect their minds through the neural bridge, a process called drifting that let both pilots see each other's memories. The deeper the memory connection, the better they could control the Jäger. Once mentally synced, Gypsy Danger powered up. The colossal machine marched through stormy ocean waters. In the middle of the sea, a ship found itself trapped in the rain. The ship's crew panicked when a massive kaiju appeared before them, then panicked harder when Gypsy Danger showed up behind them. The Jäger grabbed the ship and moved it to safety. The battle between Gypsy Danger and the kaiju began. The Jäger fired its dual plasma cannons at the monster. For a moment, Raleigh thought they'd won. But this kaiju didn't go down easily. It regenerated and counterattacked, shocking the pilots. The brutal fight continued until the kaiju landed a devastating blow, slicing into Gypsy Danger and killing Yancey Beckett. Now alone in the neural link, Raleigh had to keep fighting solo. He pushed Gypsy Danger forward against the terrifying kaiju with nothing but sheer determination. On a rainy beach nearby, a father and son searched for scrap metal with a detector. They saw the fallen Gypsy Danger lying before them. Raleigh emerged from the wrecked robot, broken and lost, until 2 strangers came to his aid. 5 years after Gypsy Danger's destruction, Marshall Stacker received grim news from world officials who wanted to shut down the Jäger program. They deemed the Jäger initiative unsustainable, pinning their hopes instead on the new Wall of Life project. The officials ordered Stacker to relocate all remaining personnel to their final base in Hong Kong. They'd keep funding the Jäger program for just 8 more months, until the Wall of Life was completed. After that, no more support. Meanwhile, at a Wall of Life construction site in Alaska, Raleigh Beckett now worked building barriers meant to stop kaiju. During lunch break, workers watched news reports showing a Category 4 kaiju breaching Australia's wall in under an hour. The supposedly unbreakable barrier had failed spectacularly. Raleigh's co-workers grew skeptical their wall would fare any better. Ironically, the Australian kaiju was eventually stopped by Striker Eureka, a Jäger piloted by father-son duo Hercules and Chuck Hansen. Suddenly, helicopter blades chopped through the air. Marshall Stacker Pentecost had come personally to recruit Raleigh. At first, Raleigh refused, still haunted by his brother's death. But Stacker countered with a simple choice: die behind a wall, or fight in a Jaeger. Their helicopter soon touched down at Hong Kong's Shatterdome headquarters. There, Raleigh was greeted by Mako Mori. Inside awaited not just Mako, but Stacker's research team, the brilliant but eccentric doctor, Newton Geisler, and his perpetually annoyed colleague, Dr. Herman Gottlieb. Raleigh was invited into the massive hangar where the Jaegers were stored. Above them loomed a huge observation window. Meanwhile, Mako and Raleigh were ordered to stay put at headquarters. 3 Jaegers marched toward Hong Kong's shoreline to intercept the approaching kaiju that was heading for the mainland wall. Elsewhere, Newton informed Hannibal Chow that he was looking for a live kaiju sample. Hannibal suddenly realized Newton had actually drifted with a kaiju brain. "You've made a huge mistake," Hannibal growled. Out in Hong Kong's waters, Crimson Typhoon engaged one kaiju while Cherno Alpha fought another, with Striker Eureka waiting in reserve. Chuck Hansen, never one for patience, watched impatiently as the other Jaegers fought. He and his father finally decided to join the battle. Crimson Typhoon fell first, then Cherno Alpha was overwhelmed by acid attacks and destroyed by 2 kaiju working together. Striker Eureka entered the fray and managed to kill one kaiju. Just as it prepared to launch missiles, the remaining kaiju emitted an electromagnetic pulse, disabling Striker Eureka and knocking out power across Hong Kong. With Striker paralyzed, the situation looked hopeless. That's when Raleigh had an idea. "Send out Gypsy Danger," he urged Stacker. As an older analog model powered by dual nuclear reactors instead of digital systems, Gypsy was immune to the EMP. Meanwhile, Hannibal Chow ordered Newton to take cover. "That drift works both ways, genius," Hannibal snapped. Thanks to Newton's reckless experiment, the aliens were now aware of their location, and Hannibal suspected the kaiju might specifically target Newton.
Out in the bay, Hercules and Chuck Hansen sat trapped in their immobilized Jaeger. In a desperate move, they fired emergency flares to distract the kaiju. Just as the monster turned to attack them, Gypsy Danger arrived like a mechanical guardian angel. Raleigh and Mako piloted Gypsy Danger into a brutal battle with the kaiju. The fight was so intense that the monster actually threw Gypsy Danger into Hong Kong's port district. On the shoreline, Gypsy Danger finally gained the upper hand, pummeling the kaiju with precise flare gun shots. Raleigh delivered the final blows as another kaiju suddenly burst through a wall near the lab, clearly targeting Newton. Just as it was about to grab the scientist, Gypsy Danger came crashing through with an entire cargo ship and crushed the kaiju under its massive weight. The kaiju fled, with Gypsy Danger in hot pursuit. It tried to ambush them from behind buildings, attacking again in a brutal clash that nearly destroyed the Jaeger. The beast actually lifted Gypsy Danger into the sky. In midair, Raleigh activated Gypsy's plasma sword, slicing through the kaiju's limbs. Now, free-falling from the upper atmosphere, Raleigh shouted at Mako to fire all thrusters. Gypsy Danger barely managed a crash landing, but they survived. Back at Shatterdome, the crew cheered for Raleigh and Mako's double kaiju kill. The Hansens personally thanked Raleigh for saving their lives. Stacker swelled with pride for Mako, until suddenly clutching his side in pain and quickly excusing himself. At the kaiju carcass site, Hannibal Chow's crew excavated organs for Newton's research. Their celebration turned to horror when they detected a heartbeat from the dead kaiju. Turns out it had been pregnant. The premature baby kaiju twitched briefly before expiring, after taking a chunk out of Hannibal. Meanwhile, Stacker confided in Raleigh about his radiation poisoning from early Jaeger testing. "Only you and I survived solo drifting," he said. Their heart-to-heart was interrupted by an alert, another kaiju at the rift. The final mission was a go. As crews prepped Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka, Chuck panicked about his injured father's inability to pilot. Enter Stacker, in a pilot suit. Despite Mako's protests about his health, the Marshal was determined to lead this suicide mission. "Today we cancel the apocalypse," Stacker declared. Chuck, now paired with his mentor, shared a solemn goodbye with his father, both knowing this might be their last drift together. Hercules Hansen, realizing this was a suicide mission, found the courage to let his son go. He wanted the world to remember their sacrifice. Meanwhile, the scientists Newton and Gottlieb had made a shocking discovery after drifting with the kaiju brain. They urgently explained their plan to destroy the interdimensional portal. As Strike Eureka and Gypsy Danger descended into the ocean depths, two kaiju approached at terrifying speeds. Newton suddenly interrupted from Command Center. The portal has DNA recognition. It won't just let any random bomb through. Their only chance was to trick the portal by making it think a nuke was a kaiju. Just then, sensors detected a third kaiju approaching, the largest, Category 5 in history. The colossal beast emerged before Striker Eureka while another attacked Gypsy Danger, disabling its arm cannon. Though damaged, Gypsy managed to slay its attacker with a plasma sword strike. Striker Eureka found itself surrounded by the remaining kaiju. In a final act of defiance, Stacker and Chuck detonated Striker's nuclear payload, obliterating both monsters. With his last breaths, Stacker radioed Rally their final plan. Gypsy Danger's twin reactors could permanently seal the rift if detonated inside. As the crippled Gypsy Danger began its descent toward the portal, Stacker shared a quiet goodbye with Mako, the daughter he'd raised to continue the fight. The two Jaeger pilots, father and son in all but blood, faced their end together with the dignity of warriors who'd chosen how their story would end. The explosion rocked the ocean depths as Gypsy Danger, still clutching the dead kaiju, made its desperate push toward the portal. But the Category 5 kaiju wasn't done yet. It intercepted them in a last-ditch attack. With a burst of propulsion, Gypsy charged forward, grabbing the massive beast and dragging them both toward the swirling rift. The kaiju's crushing grip compromised Gypsy's oxygen systems. Rally fired point-blank plasma shots into its underbelly, finally killing the creature as they crossed into the portal. Mako began losing consciousness from oxygen deprivation. Rally barely managed to seal her into an escape pod and launch her toward the surface before Gypsy fully entered the alien dimension. Alone in the crippled Jaeger, bleeding and battered, Rally manually armed Gypsy's nuclear cores. The last thing he saw before ejecting was the blinding detonation that vaporized the portal. Moments later, both escape pods breached the surface. Mako frantically pulled the unresponsive Raleigh from his pod until he suddenly gasped awake, earning the biggest relieved smile of her life. With Stacker gone, Hercules Hansen officially reset the doomsday clock to not today apocalypse. And somewhere in Hong Kong's ruins, Hannibal Chow coughed up kaiju stomach acid. Thus concluded Pacific Rim's first chapter, with the rift closed, but the story far from over. The movie ended.